I got on a lift with him today.
Can't get in trouble for what you said.
Hey, you know what? Get a handshake.
Hi, I'm Sarge.
I'm Thea.
Nice to meet you.
Right, good morning.
Sarge. Nice to meet you.
Kim,
Hi.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi, Sarge. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good morning, Kim. Nice to meet you.
too.
Patrick.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third annual Sauder Summit. This is round 3 of the competition. The judges present today are Guy Hamone, Business Intelligence Analysis from Glentil, Curtis Johansson, Director, CIA Private Equity, and Emma Cook, Management Consultant, Sierra Systems Group. Judges, thank you all for your time and expertise for today's event. Audience, please turn off your mobiles and refrain from using them during the presentation. After the Q&A period, I will be asking you to leave the room so judges have adequate time to deliberate. Each presentation is 20 minutes long, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. Any time not used for the presentation will be allocated towards Q&A. For the presentation, the timer will be giving visual reminders at the 5 minute, 1 minute, and 15-second marks. Presentations will be strictly cut off when the time has elapsed. Judges, we request you not to ask any new questions in the last minute of the Q&A. The timer will give you a reminder. And lastly, please note that the presentation and Q&A periods are being recorded. Presenters, you may start.
So how did communication start? It started simple, face to face, between one person to the next. And what this created was a long connection, a long-standing connection. However, as people developed, communication also developed. And ultimately, we were able to communicate not only face to face to the person in front of us, but across geographies to multiple people at the same time. What did this mean? This meant that connections were not limited. Connections could be anywhere. We could see anyone build a relationship and build a lasting connection. The only limit was our imagination. Good afternoon, my name is Sarge, and alongside Clement, Patrick and Somye, we would like to present you, the members of Glentil Incorporated, with a blueprint on how to globally facilitate connections. But before we do that, it's worth taking a step back and understanding your company. Thus far, you have 3 key strengths which you have levered to immense success. The first of these is your presence across the United States, Canada, and Australia. The second is your flexible and adaptive solutions, your ability to innovate as well, and finally, your esteemed reputation, leading many projects even with companies that are significantly larger than yourselves. Ultimately, what this has translated to is you've been able to double the size of your company in 3 years. However, despite this, there's a minor issue that's arisen throughout this growth, and that's the business division. Business division has grown relatively slower than your retail divisions, still growing at a significant rate of 20% over the last year, but in comparison to the retail division, which has almost tripled and quadrupled, especially in the United States, this growth is not significant enough. Therefore, the objective we present you with here is how to drive strong and sustainable growth specific to the business division. And in order to do so, there are 3 key questions we must answer. The first of these is how can Glentil remain economically viable? How can it build a strong platform and consolidate its presence in its home country? The second is which high margin product should Glentil focus? Obviously noting that margins are key in this industry and erosion of margins have become a more prevalent theme. And finally, how can Glentil continue to expand in the long term? Granted, noting the fact that the North American and Canadian markets are both limited, and there is an immense scope for Glentil to continue its operations overseas. Now, given that this is the case, we present 3 strategies which systematically tackle all 3 of these questions. The first strategy, Maintain, is our short-term strategy, and it focuses on connecting Canada, building a strong domestic presence, and yielding a $5.3 million cash base on which we can ultimately facilitate further expansions. Our second strategy, Grow, develops and connects your service, a service which is so powerful and so sought after that many major players are coming to you for advice. Our third and final strategy is Create, and what it does is it connects the world. It recognises the trend towards globalisation and levers upon this to enter the Australian market, a market which you already have a presence through your retail presence. Ultimately, we believe that we can facilitate global connections across a universal scale, and in order to elaborate on these in further detail, I would now like to pass it on to Clement.
Thank you, Suresh. Now, Glentel has been in the business of creating connections. That is all fine and well. What is also key is maintaining existing connections. Now, currently, within the competitive atmosphere of the company, Glentel experiences increasing competition as well as slow innovation in the LMRS industry. Now, with the increased competition, there have been a downstream movement from suppliers to actually venture into the retail industry, as well as M&A activity from network providers. And in addition, there's also been current competitors that have been undercutting prices. Given these, there's also been slow innovation in LMRS, where the only significant expansion within innovation has been the movement from analog to digital within the product offering. Now, in terms of advancement and increased availability of PT technology, this provides a substitute effectively for communication systems which are competing for the market within Glentel's portfolio. Now, this has resulted in net margins falling across the industry. So Glentel should look to diversify operations and offerings to adapt to changes within the industry as the technological changes in competitive sphere is pressing Glentel's growth. Now, within the technology itself, the consumers are seeing that we are seeing a shift in consumers moving away from traditional communication systems to more hybrid, more convergent systems. A fine example of this is LTE technology, which boasts high-speed wireless communication systems and data streaming for mobile phones. Now, what does this mean for Glentel? It means that there is scope for expansion within a gap in the market. Effectively, this convergence of technologies can create more profitable and growth and high margin contracts. Now, I'd like to bring up one example, is the product, the Motorola APX 7000L. This is a hybrid communication system which both utilises the LMRS voice communications, which have been traditionally reliable, as well as the LTE broadband network, which provides data streaming applications, as well as further expansion for apps themselves. Now, the consumer actually benefits in two main areas. The operational efficiency, the fact that they have a convergent and unified system, as well as the no need to overhaul the existing systems, the fact that they can swap and change within the two systems concurrently. Now, what does this mean for Glentel? That they should consider LTE technologies to evolve with the technological trends that are occurring within the market today. Now, given that we've established the technologies that exist, we also have to figure out which markets are most applicable to actually adopt this type of technology. And for that, the strategy today, we've identified that the mission-critical telecommunication part of the market is where it's all happening. There has been planned investment of $1.7 billion within Canada for a push within the communications in this industry. In addition, 90% of the public safety market recognise that data and voice-to-voice communications are of equal importance. And lastly, 60% of the public safety market will invest in communications in the next years, even though there's been budget concerns. So that highlights the importance of communication in the industry. Now, Glentel possesses the necessary expertise, human capital, as well as scale to actually further push an expansion in this area and unify the LTE and LMRS products within their existing array of products. Now that we've got the industry, let's look at the locations and potential partners that that Glentel can partner with. So there's been a 70% expenditure on the eastern side of Canada towards the safety industry in the LMRS market. Now, our analysis has highlighted that Toronto is a target city for the following reasons. It's primarily it's the largest populated city in Canada. It's also the largest focus of industry expenditure within the LMRS market. And a fine example is the fire department is looking to expand. So there is an open potential contract within this industry. Partners that that Glentel can potentially partner with are Motorola, Airbus, and Tate. They all have expertise within the mission critical or public safety markets. So Glentel should consider an RFP and bid in Toronto to establish long-term growth. Now, creating connections is all well and good, but financial viability is one of the most important things from Glentel's point of view. A modest MPV of 5.3 million for this project will provide that long-term and effectively financial bonus for this project. And a payback period of 4 years is also a modest consideration. Now, the key question that we have answered today is effectively how Glentel can remain competitive given industry and competitive forces, as well as technological movements within the industry. Now that we have established connections in Canada from our strategy, we now push to see how Glentel can effectively grow their business organically and inorganically in many ways that can establish strong financial positions. I'd like to invite Patrick to the floor to further elaborate.
Our next strategy today focuses on how your company can identify markets with high margins and then best capitalize these markets. So currently, your position in the industry has a high and increasing level of competition. In addition, the different products and services you're offering have their margins being squeezed. So what you need to do now is look for alternate areas and alternate ways to either enter into a new market or find a way to stay in the existing market while leveraging these high margins. There are 3 key characteristics for high margin markets. First of all, reliability. Second, differentiation of products. And third, utilizing customer trends. Your company already has a reliable product. The technology that you use is reliable, and that shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. Differentiation, on the other hand. Unfortunately, the product, the two-way radio system and other products that you offer can be quite easily substituted. It's quite hard to differentiate that product within the marketplace. So what we're proposing today is using additional service elements and pairing that technology with other technology or service offerings in order to differentiate yourself in a domestic level. Lastly, you need to acknowledge customer trends. Customers are more and more valuing convenience and valuing having everything given to them and understand, or having everything where they can easily understand it and easily manage it from an external and internal point of view. So Glentel must address these 3 factors in order to identify an industry with high margins to operate in. So currently, the service you offer with the highest margins is solution integrations. And what that is that's managing the projects for these companies, providing technology, and then managing the consultation, project management, installation, and also post-service requirements. This service is more profitable due to the flexibility of it and the ability to build a relation with the customer over the life of the product. So leveraging this, what we're proposing today is integrated IT services, where we can provide on-site support for remote services, monitoring functions, and security management services to complement the type of industries that you as a company provide for already in order to make them more secure, more reliable, and ultimately better. In order to do this, what we're proposing is an acquisition. Acquiring a company with this technology, the IT infrastructure and networking systems available to complement what you as a company already has in both Canada and the US. This company, Graken Group, has 40 employees, does what I've already spoken about today. In addition, offers the support services that you do as well. They actively go out and engage their customers over the life of the project, meaning that customer relation that they build forms loyalty, meaning that they're going to come back, customers are going to come back in the future and do repeat purchases and be happy with the product and satisfied. So So this delivers a number of benefits. Firstly, to your company, then to the company that we're acquiring. And in addition, it matches the overall values that the company has portrayed, both on its website, in documentation, and also just in person to its clients. For your company, not only are we able to diversify that product and service offering in order to differentiate the market, like I talked about initially, but we're also able to do value-added services, which consumers are more than willing these days to pay a premium price for. And that is where you're able to derive your high margins. In addition, this will give us access to new clients. We're able to perform, already you have a reliable product, but now you can take that reliability to a new level. You're able to provide the two-way radio systems with networks in order to ensure communication across longer periods, longer distances. So this acquisition achieves an overall increase in the quality of the service and aligns, like I said, with the company values. Delivering an NPV of 5.5 million. We acknowledge we are going to see negative cash flows initially, but we want to really focus on the fact that this isn't necessarily a strategy to build financial returns straight away. We're trying to really solidify our place in the market and develop a niche in which you're able to gain high margins as well as in the future. So now that we've talked about connecting networks within the domestic, within Canada, we're now going to talk about what to do on more of a global scale. And for that, Soumya.
Thanks, Patrick. So we've discussed how Glentel can take its product into the short term into the Canadian market and how it can grow within that market. But the question arises, in a business's life and in a business's sustainable growth, there needs to be a long-term plan and a long-term platform for the company to grow. And as we've seen, and our strategy today is to enter the Australian market in these division services. As we've seen in the retail divisions, Glentel has expanded to the US and Canada before seeing an opportunity for growth, not necessarily having tapped out the option in Canada, but seeing a viable and economically attractive opportunity within these nations. Now, looking at the countries for a business development perspective and utilizing our LMS technology, we see that Australia provides an attractive option through two key avenues. The first of which is that we have a large presence and a large market share within the retail division. So we have an established presence in the market. We actually understand the market. And Glentel can actually leverage that in going forward in this market. And we also see that while the US and Canada are further developed within this market, Australia has been relatively hesitant to actually go forth and actually adopt these technologies. And what we're seeing is that Australia is now adopting the technologies that the US was adopting 3 to 4 years ago, such as the LTE technologies. Now, in an industry with low innovation, an industry where products had not been sufficiently developed, going into a market where we can use our existing products and innovate on what they already have provides an attractive option. So now that we're going into Australia, what exactly are we going to be offering your clients? What exactly can Glentel offer its clients? And we've identified mining to be the key sector through a range of categories. The three main categories that we analysed was the level of competition, the competitive forces in the industry. We also analysed the market potential, the actual scale and scope of the market. But more importantly, from a company perspective, we also looked at the expertise that you can bring and the expertise that you can deliver in this market. Now, mining is the bedrock of the Australian economy. The Australian economy runs on the mining sector and is a large avenue in which Glentel can grow and go forward in the telecommunications sector. Now, one of the key issues with actually expanding into this area is actually the lead-in time required to start operation and getting into the market in a solid and attractive position and with an established customer base. And to do this effectively, to do this in a quick time, so that Glentel can quickly capitalise on the opportunity that it sees with the Australian market, we propose an acquisition with MTA, which stands for Mining Telecommunications of Australia. Mining Telecommunications of Australia retail and distribute some of the same brands that we distribute. There's a strong alignment in some of the clients they have and the clients we have. The gap that we can fulfill in this market is the fact that they are a small to mid-sized player, whereas Glentel is a mid to large player. And effectively what we can do by merging these two entities and partnering these two entities, Glentel can compete, Glentel and MTA can compete with some of the larger players in the Australian market and actually compete and prosper within this area. Now, the key benefits for each of there are key benefits for each of the parties. And as I've already talked about, they revolve around expanding the client base for the MTA and ourselves, and for the mining customers, offering geographically streamlined processes for some of the clients we existingly have. Now, it delivers a number of financial benefits, which I'll let Sarah take you through in more detail.
From a consolidated standpoint, the financials that these three recommendations will deliver will be $20 million. And I'm happy to elaborate on the details and intricacies of these three recommendations during question and answer time. In addition, we've considered non-financial methods to provide a level of complexity to the analysis and also provide an additional form of analysis. But ultimately, what we believe that Glentel must answer are three key questions. How it can remain economically viable, how it can thrive in the low margin industry, and how it can continue to expand overseas. We'd now like to open the floor to questions.
Can you help me understand a couple of things? I want to go back to the three different sort of priorities that you put in front of us. If you had to rank those in order of which we should go after first, I mean, three fairly significant strategic initiatives you've laid out there. That's a lot of time and effort. How would you suggest we attack those three?
From the discussion we had with the appointed board member, what we found is that Glentel has a very strong risk appetite and they're very willing to expand at a rapid rate. However, with that said, we believe that these three recommendations are prioritised in order of importance. So firstly, you should consolidate your Canadian presence. Secondly, you should target a high margin industry. And thirdly, you should look elsewhere. So effectively, the order in which we presented these three strategies is the order in which we would recommend you begin your strategy. This is reflected in the timeline which we have suggested, which also reflects the fact that certain strategies must have a very expedient time frame and can provide financial benefits in the almost immediate term.
Sorry, can you go back to your timeline again? I have a question about your first strategy, in terms of getting a strong stance in the Canadian market. You suggested that the industry that you're looking at is public safety, and so your client would be government. And I think that we know that a lot of times government takes a long time to issue RFPs, looking at them, and picking a vendor or whatnot. But you identify that as your short-term strategy. So I'm just wondering, how do you propose on dealing with that kind of a long-term review process? Or
So from our talk with Rick yesterday, he identified that there was a previous project in Vancouver regarding the public safety industry. Now, in terms of RFPs, we think that's sufficient nexus to actually establish a strong relationship with the government and then expedite the process, given the effectiveness of Glentel's product offering. So in the timeframe that we've considered for that first strategy, we think there is sufficient grounding to actually propel that forward. And given the nature of the industry as well as the urgency for telecommunications to upgrade and evolve with technologies, we think that timeframe is quite conservative, given that how the government is reacting with a large influx of funding towards this industry in the next 2 to 3 years from Canada's perspective.
In addition to that, that strategy isn't limited to that single particular pitch. So the Toronto public safety pitch could just be one potential avenue that Glentel could go down. Granted, if there's another government project which does obviously strike through the pipeline earlier, that is also a likely avenue, provided that it obviously combines the LT and LMRS technologies.
Can I ask you about heading into the Australian market? You talked about an alliance with MTA. Why wouldn't we just buy it?
So our second strategy will revolve around buying the company and buying. So what we believe is that entering into the market, buying a company will be very risky in terms of the financial objective, as well as sort of the reputation and those specific in terms of actually going into a market where we do have some expertise in the retail sector. However, that business sector knowledge isn't there. So what we proposed in that sort of rationale was to go down the partnership line rather than the acquisition line, which is both intensive time-wise as well as economically and also potentially risk-wise.
But presumably they're going to want to access that market as well. It doesn't strike me that it's that complicated to build the capability, organically. So either we build it organically or they do. I'm trying to understand why strategic alliances is the best way to go about it. We then ultimately don't control the product offering necessarily. We're not the ones necessarily getting the credit for it in the market. We have the capability of doing it here. So, why would we send some people down there from here and just do that?
A secondary consideration which we took into account for was the acquisition or the pending acquisition of Glentel by Bell and Rogers. Now, given that that's the case, we didn't want to overburden the company with too many acquisitions that they would be making. We do recognise that it obviously hasn't gone through yet, so there is scope that it may be reversed. But it's typically uncharacteristic for a company which is being acquired to then go out and acquire a company in itself. The second strategy is more of a medium-term strategy as is, and would only be finalised. So this is the growth strategy. It would only be finalised once the Bell and Rogers transaction has been finalised. So the third strategy, the acquisition, the partnership would obviously take place beforehand.
I'm interested in the second recommendation about acquiring Raycon. Can you elaborate more on where they're located and where their current customer base? Do elaborate research on that.
Sorry, just to confirm, that was the current customer base of Raycon Group?
Yes.
Okay, so currently they have very similar customers to us. They just provide slightly different products. Like they also have the Canadian and US border security, but they provide the IT services so they're able to communicate along the border rather than just within short distances. So that's why we believe our technology or your technology, in addition to Raycon's technology, will be able to complement each other to provide a service which is not only reliable but also safe and appropriate for their needs.
Can I come back to Australia for a second? So, when we talked about the priority of the three initiatives, you mentioned the Australian expansion being third, but it's the highest return by a fair margin. Why wouldn't I do that first?
So analysis has identified that commodity prices have been falling. So the mining sector in Australia, although it is a very viable market, currently as it stands, the volatility doesn't allow us to prioritise that in terms of a project. Now, in terms of the financial capabilities of the project, it does provide high return, but given the market risk and the macro factors that are occurring with dwindling demand from China, our analysis showed that it wasn't top list on our priority. We should look at domestic markets to sort of solidify them.
Canada is the mining jurisdiction too.
During the call with Millennial team yesterday, I'm sorry, I just have to pick on slide, potential partners.
have a slide number for that? It should be on the bottom right hand corner.
It's very dark. It's about, it's 9.
That's nine. We already partnered with those vendors, so why did you use the term potential?
So potential was used in the vein of the Toronto project. We've identified that Glentel does have partnerships with different companies, but specifically for the Toronto bit, as Toronto is a large area base, given it's one of the largest cities in North America, certain projects and certain contracts may be split up. So in terms of which potential partners will be available for that bid, that's why we did this work.
Okay.
Is this Toronto opportunity, is it near term? When is that on the DQ?
Yeah. So the specific project that we've identified is that, if you can pull up, give me next slide. Yeah. So the Fire Department of Toronto have established, this isn't part of it, by the way, have established within their budget their need to actually update their communication services throughout all of Toronto. So in terms of near term, this is the 2014, 2015, 2016 horizon. So that is sufficient ground to suggest that there is near term demand for telecommunication services within Toronto as well as solutions.